All right, well, thank you for joining us, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, my name is Dr. Denise Wolf, and I'm with the Career Center here at Sac State. So, we appreciate all of you joining us today as we are here to hear from a couple of our alumni and hear about their career journey. We have a couple of other folks here that are joining us as well from the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, as well as from the Degrees Project, as they were all collaborators in this project to bring this speaker series to you all. So we have Mitch Weathers joining us today, who is an alum from Sac State, and he's going to tell you more of his story, but he is the CEO and founder of Organized Binder and has and I believe you was in education for most of his career in teaching. And he again will share more of that with us. And then we have T Fam with us here as well, who is working as a geologist with Wood Rogers currently, and she will share her story with us as well. So I'm going to go ahead and ask some set questions that we have to get the conversation started. And then when those questions are finished, then there'll be an opportunity for participants to ask questions either via the chat or verbally. And so feel free that you can, at when it's opened up for questions, that you can unmute and ask the question. And then if you're more comfortable, you can do so in the chat. And then we will ask the panelists, the speakers, those questions. We are recording this, so this is something that will be shared on the Sac State Career Center's YouTube channel. And so that will be something you can access in the future if you have classmates or colleagues that would like to access this information in the future. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And I will go ahead and call on each one of you so that we're not having to, because of the mute aspect. So Mitch, why don't you go ahead and get started and tell us your name, what your current career is, where you're currently working, and then how that related back to your experience and what you studied at Sac State.
Sure. Thanks for having me, everybody. This is really fun. So my name's Mitch Weathers. I'm a high school science teacher and had every intention of being one of those, a teacher when I was at Sac State. I studied geology, was my undergrad. I was definitely kind of the oddball in the program because most people, so I don't know everybody's degrees, but it was a pretty rigorous program. And most people were headed to graduate school and to work in the field. And I wanted to teach high school earth science, and I loved being outside and backpacking. So I thought, well, I'm going to study geology. There wasn't a whole lot more other than I wanted to work with young people at the high school level, and I can tell you a little bit more about where that came from. So yeah, I found my way into teaching science, and about 10 years ago, I founded a company called Organized Binder. So I still actually teach high school, but in a different setting I can tell you about. And my company now works with K-12 schools and colleges around the country to implement a program that kind of spun out of my own teaching practice. So that's me.
Great, thank you. So T, so the same question to you. I'll just summarize again. So your name, of course, what you studied at Sac State, and a little bit about what you're currently doing and where you're working.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So just to give you a heads up, I kind of have a computer and a camera over here. So if you see me looking the other way, it's because I'm looking at a different screen. So I graduated from Sac State with a geology degree, and I have an engineering background as well. So, right out of college, I was working originally with USGS as a student assistant, and I continued working with them after college. It made me really interested in groundwater, because surface water and groundwater is, interconnected. And so, I realized, after USGS, I didn't really want to go into research, but I want to make an impact. So I started working at RCAC, Rural Community Assistance Corporation, and it's a nonprofit organization where I was the lead of the Individual Wealth Program. And then from there, I went to Wood Rogers as a geologist. So I have a pretty diverse background, and all of it relates to hydrogeology. With really at Sac State, it's the best school to go to because they really emphasize hydrogeology. You get hands-on experience, and that's the one thing that I really appreciate. I love my experience as a geologist student at Sac State because I got to go out to field, actually be hands-on, and I think it's very relatable to what I'm doing as a geologist. I mean, I I picked geology because I was able to work in the field, and actually I love camping and hiking and just being able to not just learn from textbook but actually apply it. That's the reason why I chose geology. So
Thank you, T. I appreciate that. So the next question is, you certainly touched on it, and Mitch, maybe you can expand a little bit more, but is to take us on a journey through your career path. So maybe a little bit more in depth as to how you got where you are today, how you made the choices, how you made some of your decisions, because that can be challenging for students. And maybe you can kind of get back in those shoes when you were first graduating. How did you first discover where you were going to go, and what was that process like for you?
Who do you want to go?
It's up to you. You can go next if you'd like, since T just went.
So more in-depth paths. Mine definitely was not straightforward. T, like you, I loved, like I said, being outside, camping, hiking, and the whole idea of studying something. And wherever I went, I was reinforcing what I was learning. Really appealed to me. But I was volunteering with a nonprofit. Sounds like we both had some time in nonprofits, and I was working with at-risk middle school and high school age students as an undergrad at Sac State, and really kind of just like fell in love with working with teenagers of that age. And yet I kind of wanted to mash the two up. And so my pathway, again, not being super straightforward, I actually started as a geography undergrad. And then after 3 years, switched to geology and added a number of years on. But I'm glad I did. But when I graduated, I became the ED, the executive director of that nonprofit for a couple years. I wanted to do that work. And then after a couple of years, realized that I was missing as a director, not working as closely with students, and I wanted to be in that academic setting. So then I went back and to graduate school in education, and I have a master's degree in cross-cultural pedagogy, and of course got my credential, and then entered the classroom. And it was really at that time in education, it ebbs and flows in terms of openings. There wasn't a whole lot. And I found a position here in Sacramento, in South Sacramento at Valley High School, where I taught for a year. And then I moved to San Francisco for about 15 years and taught in a school in Redwood City that entire time. And now I'm back. I moved back here 6 years ago. I live just around the corner down by McKinley Park from Sac State. I have my Sac State shirt on the whole bit here today. And I teach in an online independent study program. And that really for me became about autonomy, because I started this company, and it's just grown much faster than I had anticipated. And so I spend most of my time on that side of working with schools and colleges, and I'm still teaching, still working with students, because I love that. But because it's an online independent study program, I have quite a bit of autonomy with my schedule. So it works pretty well. Did I answer your question? Did I miss anything?
Yes. No, I mean, there's nothing that you had to say,
Okay.
but just a little bit more in depth. So you did that. That was great. Thank you. So T, then over to you. Again, when you mentioned an overview of your path, but if you can just take us a little bit deeper into that, so that our students might be able to gain some some knowledge or insight as to what it was like when you were first graduating and how you got from these various points.
Sure. All right, well, I guess starting from the very beginning, how I got my first professional job. So I started off as student assistant for USGS, but I think before that, I was working in a research project with the Department of Bioscience, and that, I don't know, so that kind of helped me get my USGS job because in a way it gave me research experience, as well as I was active when I got that job because I went to one of the presentation by USGS staff, and then I emailed him and asked if I could set up a meeting to just talk more about his job and just get a better understanding of what he does on a day-by-day basis. Um, just to get my door in, and because that was just something that I was really interested in, being able to get an inside view of what USGS does. And that's how I got my job. Went proactive, and I started student assistant, and I continued working with them after college for another year. But then I realized I didn't really want to go into research. After getting that experience, I wanted to go into. I wasn't sure. Honestly, I took a year off just to kind of figure out what is that I want to go into because I wanted to make an impact in the world, and I wanted to be able to see my impact. So I saw a position at RCAC, um, and I thought the job experience and the skill set they were looking for kind of perfectly met my skill set and what I wanted to do. So I went to US. So when I started with RCAC, um, I started as the lead of the individual well program, and that program was able to assist rural communities, private well owners, be able to educate them about how to operate and maintain their well systems. And I was also involved in other well programs where we provide financial assistance for private wells that went dry due to drought. And I mean, you could tell like just going up to a person whose well has gone dry for a year and now they're able to get a new well. Imagine living a year without water. You have to have a truck come in and transport your water to you. It's just very difficult. So the stories I've heard is just it was heartbreaking, and I felt very appreciative doing that job, and I really enjoyed it. It allowed me to travel, go to different states, and help different rural communities, and from emergency response planning management to being able to provide trainings for professionals as well as provide education for private well owners. So from there, like I really loved being able to work in groundwater and make an impact and actually um, have people reach out to me and ask for my help. So from there, I wanted to get my professional license as a geologist. So that's one of the reasons why I went to Wood Rogers. And working with them just gave me a more in-depth like experience and understanding of how well constructions are built, and out in the field being able to see the well being constructed versus training and not being able to actually see it. um, so every job gave me a new learning experience, and um, I think one of the advice that I would give to students is that don't don't be limited on just one direction. I want to be a geologist. Be a little bit more broad because geology is such a broad field. You really can go into anything with a geology degree. So do something you're passionate about. So
Thank you, T. You all are doing a great job of going into all of the questions. So that brings me to the next one, which is, what career advice do you have for students? So we'll bounce back to Mitch, since T, you already touched on that a little bit, but you can certainly expand once Mitch is finished.
Denise, is everybody a geology undergrad?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just going to echo what T said in terms of just keep your options and mind open to those experiences. I know for me, I definitely was pulled as she mentioned with a geology undergrad, are you going to go into hydro, or could you go into something that's working with seismic activity? Or, I mean, there were so many directions that a bunch of classmates that ended up in mining out in Nevada and went to UNR. I mean, there was just so diverse. So any undergrad or any undergraduate degree that allows for you to pivot and try things, I think is really, really critical. There was a point where when I was heading back to graduate school in education where I actually went and interviewed with a geology firm in town and was just trying to figure out what am I going to do next steps. So the interview process was actually more fact finding for me, and it confirmed that I think I really do want to go into the field of education. But yeah, to keep your mind open and then really think through who in terms of networking to get a job, because it's so critical. I mean, hearing what you're saying, T, about your time with USGS and just being proactive and a self-starter, but then I imagine all the relationships you made during that time had an impact. And I know for me, that was true when I went, again, not in geology now, but in education. It was all the people I started meeting. And through those connections, I found my first job. And so it's both of those, I would say. Keep your kind of mind open, and then think through your network. I mean, even joining a call like this, being here today, says a lot that you showed up to hear us. So.
Fabulous. And I didn't tell him to say those things. So that's exactly the message that we send. So thank you for confirming that for us. T, anything else you would like to add as far as advice as students look towards their career and their next step?
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to follow up on what Mitch said about networking. One of the things I would advise is for a student to go out there, go to networking events like GRA meetings that they have monthly. I know right now because of COVID, they're not having like in-person meeting, but you can still join them virtually. And it's just a great opportunity to meet the professional in the field that, could help you get your next job. But when you approach them, make sure that you approach them with the right perspective, motivation, because you don't want to come up and say, just, I need a job. That's why I'm talking to you. No, go up to them, ask them about their job, what they do, see if it interests you, because it goes both ways. You want to find a job that you're passionate about, and they're trying to find recruiting students who are passionate about what they're doing. So show that, whatever it is that you're passionate about, because I would advise find a job that you're passionate about and not a job that where a lot of people just chase after the money. And at the end of the day, you may be doing well, like money wise, you may be getting a high salary, but if you don't enjoy your job, you're doing an 8 to 5 job, just just wishing the day was over. So, it's better to find a job you're passionate about and actually enjoy doing. And it may take some time going from, doing a couple of jobs and changing jobs a couple times, but that's okay because that's kind of the journey. So that's what I would advise students to do. And again, just be proactive. That's how you find your first job. Make sure that you're not shy. And if you are, then great. Build up those soft skills and go to those networking events. And um, just trust me, people want to talk to you. So don't be intimidated.
I'll jump in and just echo that in terms of your passion. That matters. I graduated from Sac State in '97, so that's a long time ago. But I've loved what I've done since. I've often told people, like, I don't really feel like I work. I mean, I'm working, of course, but it doesn't feel like work most of the time. Of course, there's those times. So I'd echo that. And then if you are just saying, if you feel like you are kind of shy in the networking events, intimidate you, it's almost like this time of sheltering in place is a little bit of a gift because you can show up virtually and kind of hone some of your skills and get yourself out there. And then when they do open back up, you can go in person. So.
Yes, absolutely. Those are great, great tips and pieces of advice for our students. Um, the one that to kind of piggyback off of that last question, I'm curious if you can think back to when you were a student, what would you have wanted to know that you know today that would have made a difference for you in your journey? And
I guess
T, yeah.
I'll go first then. So I think one of the things I wish I've done more as a student, again, is networking. I mean, going to a conference like a GRA conference is so cheap as a student. It's $100, or if you don't have $100, there's scholarships that would be able to fund you to go to these conferences, and it's a great opportunity to meet such a diverse, group of professionals, as well as people from all over the world. Sometimes to these national conference. Um, so, get out there and, instead of just being at home and studying from a textbook, communication skills is very important. So,
Um, and this may be depending on where people are in their program. I know from my experience when I switched from geography to geology, a big part of that was just career opportunity. Realizing that honing in that I wanted to teach high school earth science. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But there was just at the time, far fewer opportunities with a geography degree undergraduate than there were geology. And had I known or done some research around, okay, what can I do with this degree? I mean, because that is the point. Hopefully you enjoy what you're studying, but it's a stepping stone, starting point for you. And so that was really illuminating for me after 3 years, having a conversation with the dean of both of those departments and realizing, wow, there's so much more opportunity at that time with geology. So that's one thing I wish I would have known. So I don't know if that's helpful. And then I was really excited to teach high school earth science. Really excited, like we just get to go outside, like how this is just going to be like an engaged students. And I've deliberately up until my current position worked with in very kind of urban high school settings, and I really wanted to connect with those students and have that opportunity to go outside, only to realize when I got out of graduate school that there really is no earth science positions in California. It's an elective, and on occasion it's taught, but it's not your biochem physics, which has been fun. I've had to go back and get credentials in other subjects in science as well. But that's maybe something. Just doing that research around what's the next option. If you're pursuing something and there's like one or two possibilities, at this point that can feel pretty limiting. So.
Yes, thank you for that, both of you.
if it's
Oh,
okay, if I
yes,
can add something from the
absolutely.
question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking that one of the things that I wish I knew as a student is that when you're looking for a job, don't just put in geologist. Don't be, because your degree, sometimes you want to go think about what skill set you have and type in what you're interested in. Like for me, I usually, when I do job search, I type in hydrogeology or groundwater, because guess what? A lot of the job titles are not going to be specific like geologists. Rural development specialist, which was my previous job. It was kind of, I went on their website and that's how I saw their job position opening. So, just make sure that you know that not all job titles are geologist is the only title. It can be pretty broad.
Yes, absolutely. I share that with students a lot, and that crosses all job searching. So thank you for bringing that up. The next question I'm going to ask has to do more with our post-pandemic world that we're entering. And what advice do you have for students as they begin to navigate launching their careers and job searching with the way that our world has changed? And Mitch, do you want to start?
I was hoping you wouldn't call on me. No, I'm kidding. I saw that question in the list, and that's an interesting question. Oddly enough, we have some new neighbors across the street, and it turns out, keep in mind, I taught in Redwood City, so 2 or 3 hours away from here. One of my former students who just graduated from Davis with an environmental studies degree is now renting a house across the street from me. And so she's exactly in that position. She literally just graduated in the spring. And is looking. The one thing I think is going to be a silver lining, or I hope, is that all of the skills you're honing by engaging in events like this, as much as this would be, and for me, I would have enjoyed being there with you all in person on campus, and that'd be fantastic. But this is going to be part of our working environment moving forward. And I think that's a good thing. I think it needs to be a blending of the two. And T, a lot of the skills you're mentioning, soft skills and social skills, figuring out how to translate those in a digital environment and connect with people and develop relationships, that matters. And so I can just say, go out on a limb maybe a little bit here, it all comes down to relationships. Whatever your career path is, it's a human endeavor with other human beings. And so your ability to, of course, do your job and what you're trained for and et cetera, but your ability to connect and work with people and alongside people in both a digital and a physical environment matters. So I'm hopeful that all of us are maybe developing a skill set that maybe we didn't have because we didn't do a whole lot of this type of engagement. So I just say that to say, I think as you're putting yourself out there, this skill set matters too, and bringing that to the forefront along with your education and maybe other skills and experiences you're listening. I think there's something there to highlight from this environment. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I don't have a really clear answer. I'll be honest. When I saw that question, I was like, wow, that's it's challenging.
Yes, thank you, Mitch.
So I would say for the students, I think this is direction we're going to be heading toward eventually. We just fast forwarded because of COVID, but being able to, again, echoing what Mitch say, soft skills, building relationships. I mean, those are skills that employers are looking for, and I remember when I was in college, no one likes teamwork. It was just a lot more work working as a team, and I get it. But you know what? It's an important skill to develop because you're going to always be working with a team. Even when you have individual projects, you're going to eventually have to reach out to partners and form those relationships to, enhance your work. So if you can build up now during COVID, it's a really great opportunity. And, one thing that's positive about this situation is that people have more time. So go on LinkedIn. If you don't have a profile already, form one and start reaching out to those professionals and set up those, meetings to just talk more about what they do. And they have time to talk to you now. So, that's a positive.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all. And I didn't share this earlier, but that's how I found Mitch and T was LinkedIn. And a lot of our speakers we find in various ways, but it just so happens that this first event in this series was me reaching out on LinkedIn, and so it works. And your message isn't just going into nowhere. It does get received. And folks like T and Mitch, they do want to give back and they want to share their story and their experience so that they can help you as you navigate your part of the journey. So it is real and it does work.
And if I could add to that,
Yeah.
it may be quite intimidating at first, feeling like, it's like a grown-up club, LinkedIn. And what I would be strategic, because there are people like T and I saw I'm sure there were more inquiries sent and fewer responses than those sent out. And that's just the deal. You're going to reach out to some people and some people won't reply. But if you reach out to somebody, find the people on LinkedIn that you have connections with. Maybe they're Sac State alumni, or they live here in Sacramento, or same degree, or something that in your, hey, I'm just wanting to learn about what you do, if that's your angle. But finding those points of connection, not just a blanket, geology or whatever your search is. Like finding that common ground, I think people will be more likely to chat with you, and they do. I'll totally echo that. They want to help. I love doing like new teachers or people starting businesses into the education space. I'm like always willing to talk to them because it's fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And it's we appreciate you giving your time. And we do, I'll mention, right, as we're talking about this subject too, we have a tool called the Sac State Career Network, and you can find it on the Career Center homepage, but it is a mentee-mentor platform, so that Mitch and T, if you want to continue to have more one-on-one, we'd encourage you can link your LinkedIn profile and be available to speak with students. Same for students. I would encourage you to get on there and connect with other alumni that want to give their time. And there's various different types of consultations you could book with someone. So I'd encourage you all, and as a theme from this session has been relationship building and networking and getting to know people and being curious and open-minded. And so with those themes in mind, I'm continuing to connect with folks that are out there that have done it. It is going to be a great next step for everyone. So that tool will allow you to do it. So I would encourage everyone to check it out. So Mary, if you could plug the link into the chat, that would be great. I'd appreciate that. So the last question that we have that was prepared is regarding lab and field experience. And the question was phrased also for any virtual lab experience, which the two of you may not have had as students, but feel free to answer this as you can. But some of our students will have, as you've already started to talk about, more virtual experience, whether it be in their laboratory classes and such. And so how would you recommend that they leverage that when they're interviewing and applying for positions? And T, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I would say your field experience, emphasize your field experience, because you learn more in a field than you do from a textbook. Not that, the information in your classroom is not important, but if you can apply what you learn and actually communicate it and explain it in a thorough way where they realize they can actually understand you instead of just repeating whatever you read in your textbook. I don't have a lot of experience in virtual laboratories, but I would imagine you still learn from that. So, and employers know during COVID that you do have virtual classrooms and they'll understand. So they'll take that into consideration. So I think it all goes down to communication. Can you explain what you learn and explain it well? So
I would, keep in mind that everybody's in your position. So even though it's this virtual lab experience versus actual field or lab experience, since everyone's in the boat, it's kind of the same thing. So as you might have sold your, hold on one second here. Sorry, little kid breakdown there. I just think that there is something to be said for, hey, selling your virtual experience and how unique that is. Of course, I'm going to repeat what he said about communication and soft skills. These kind of non-cognitive skills or executive functions matter, probably now more than ever. But if you're looking to kind of promote's the right word, even just talk about your field or lab experience, being that it is unique in this digital environment, I think there's something there that can really be a selling point for you. And I would encourage you to talk about and promote those skills and the success you've had, and then how you would translate that when you get to go into the field or the actual laboratory, and then the possibility of maybe blending both of those. Because potentially when we go back to, if we go back to school and life as we know it, there may be a class that doesn't have the experience you've had in this time. So I think there's some skills there to promote. It's really interesting to me.
Yes, thank you both for that. That was great. One final question I'll just kind of throw in there is when you are, I don't know if either of you have done any hiring at all during your careers, but and even if you haven't, but what is one piece of advice you would give students as they look to get their resumes ready? What would you suggest that is for you something really important that they should have on there?
Well, at RCAC, I was actually on a couple interview panels, and one of the things that we look for, most important, make sure your resume and cover does not have any grammar problems. When you start seeing grammar problems, it kind of reflects your personality, and if you have a grammar problem or something that important, imagine if they hire you on your other projects. So imagine you having as sloppy of work as that compared to your resume and cover letter. And also make sure that you really highlight and describe your skill sets, because sometimes there's transferable skills that you have, even if it's not a professional job. It could be a retail job. It's the skill sets still can transfer, like customer service, communication, leadership. You could have a leadership skills in a volunteer position. Like I worked in Engineers Without Borders, and I was the treasurer of Engineers Without Borders for 3 years. So that kind of shows my financials and leadership skills. So just make sure you put everything on there.
And no skill should be left off. Stuff that you might think like, well, everybody can do this. Not everybody can. You'd be surprised. So I'm going to echo that. Have someone proofread your resume. Have multiple people proofread your resume. So I have hired people in my company setting, so more on kind of a business side of things. But I've also was a department chair for, gosh, like 15 years of our science department. And although I wasn't the one who made the final choice, I sat in on every hire and fire for that time. And one thing I really like is the ability to almost get to know the person a little bit through their resume. And that's tough, but it's that foot in the door, something that's a little bit different, something that's a little bit unique. I would say make sure you're qualified for the most part for whatever job you're applying for. And if you're not maybe fully qualified, with a cover letter explaining why you think you're a good fit. It's a little bit different in my world with education. It's like you either have a teaching credential or not. It's pretty hard to get a job without. But that may not be the case for all positions, and having that conversation and the ability to introduce and sell yourself matters. So yeah, I would think through how can your resume, this static digital file or piece of paper, communicate something about you. And I would definitely, any language experience you have, if you're bilingual or trilingual, or any work experience, you know, any of those things, they matter. That really does. And it doesn't have to be related necessarily to a job in the geology field. So.
Great, thank you. We don't ask that enough when we have the opportunity with great alum like yourself and employers. So I just wanted to get your insight there. And it's kind of like students, when they ask their parents advice, they're less likely to take it than from the outsider like you all. So they're more likely to take it from you all. So I will mention, talking about the error-free aspect of resumes, which I strongly agree with that, is that there is a tool in Canvas for you all called Smart Thinking. And you can submit professional writing, like your resume, to have it reviewed by someone. So the Career Center can help you as well, but this is also a great virtual way to do that as well. So you submit your resume, and I did it as a test, and within 24 hours, the person got back to me with great feedback. So not only can a counselor at the Career Center or one of our graduate interns help you with your resume and reviewing it and editing it and giving you guidance, but you can use that Smart Thinking tool in the professional writing piece. So I would encourage that as another next step as you start to hone and get your resume ready to apply for internships and field opportunities and your next step. So now that our prepared questions are finished, I'd like to open it up for any questions from participants that are with us in this session. So again, feel free to unmute. You should have the ability to do that, or you can share your question in the chat.
I'd actually like to ask a question, if that's okay. So was there ever a time while you guys were either undergrads or maybe towards the end when you were graduating where you weren't 100% sure of your end goal and you were still exploring your career opportunities? Because I know from the input you guys have given us so far, it seems like you guys were pretty set on what your interests were. But was there ever a time, possibly even in high school going into college where you weren't sure, and how did you decide your path?
I'm going to jump in because I am the poster child for not knowing what I wanted to do. I spent 3 years at American River First Community College. Grew up kind of near that part of town. And I think I declared like 12 different majors in that time. I like all kind of within the natural sciences and environmental studies. Thought I wanted to be a park ranger. Always kind of thought I'd be a teacher. I liked that idea. I liked the idea of nonprofit work. But what I really liked was the idea of backpacking and snowboarding and mountain biking. And that's just where I was. And so the one thing I did have was, maybe it was a healthy fear. It was like, well, you're going to have to do something. You got to just keep moving in the direction. That was kind of my logic. So I fumbled around and then eventually chose geography, and I went to Sac State, really excited about that. And then I spent some time in that major and realized that, well, I wonder what am I going to do with this? Like, I hadn't even thought about it. I just was excited that I had chosen a major, because if you have a degree, then you can get a job. That was kind of like my thinking. Still spending a lot of time in the mountains and not really pursuing a whole lot else besides this nonprofit work that I was becoming very passionate about. And then it was that one kind of epiphany where I was like, I should go and see what my options are. And then I switched to geology. That I finally kind of picked a path, and I still didn't follow it. I graduated. I'm not kidding. I mean, T can speak to this, and if anyone else has gone through the geology program at Sac State, it's hard. It's a really hard major. And to go back and do that, to become a teacher, people were kind of like scratching their head, like, really? Like, you could become a teacher in so many other ways. Like, you're going to do all this lab work and field work. And so I did that. And then I stuck with the nonprofit for a couple of years. And then even then, when I quit that, I had gotten married and realized that there wasn't a whole lot of definition in terms of the hours I was working, because I was raising money for the nonprofit and managing a board, and I had a staff of volunteer employee. It was endless, and I didn't want that in my personal life. So I quit that, and my wife dropped out of Sac State, and we left for Europe until we ran out of money, and backpacked all around in our first year of marriage, just still not fully aware of what I'm going to do. And it was on that trip that I made the choice to either, still not knowing what I'm going to do, go and get a graduate degree in geology or in education. And then I sat in on 2 interviews and started substitute teaching just to figure it out, and realized, no, okay, this is a good synthesis of both for me. So if you're feeling any of that at all, I would say good for you, because you should. And back to what T said about keeping things broad and being able to pivot, trying new things. Please don't hear from me talking to you as this old guy that I had it like when I was 16. I knew what I was going to do. Not even close.
Yeah, no, I think I'll just echo what Mitch said. Entering college, I thought I was going to be pre-med, but then I changed my major a couple of times, and then I got into geology. And I still, throughout my career path, it's really a journey. You kind of figure out what you're interested in as you get more experience. So don't be afraid that you're saying, I just don't know what I want to do after college. It's okay. Get that experience for your first job, and then go from there. You'll eventually, understand more about yourself, and that your experience will kind of help you understand what it is that you're interested in. And that's how I found out what I'm passionate about. So I think it's just about getting work experience and going out there and being sure that don't be afraid and say, okay, I have a geology degree, I have to go into something as a geologist. That's not necessary. It's not a direct path. I don't think anyone could say that their career is a direct path. It's a journey. You just learn as you go.
And the great thing is you have when you earn your degree, can't say enough about that now. I've spent 20 years in the field of education, and really you've heard a lot of people probably tell you, like, just have that degree matters. It opens doors. And it really does. It opens doors, and it allows you the privilege really of pivoting and thinking and trying new things. So kudos to all of you for earning your degree. You're not going to regret that.
I would like to add to what Mitch said. Your degree is important. It gets you into a door for an interview, but that's about it. After you're in the interview room, it's about showing that what what you learned in the past 4 years, and what you're passionate about. Because hopefully you've done more than just attend classes. You've actually done nonprofit work or student government or other work that just shows that you're trying to figure it out. Get more work experience and figure out what it is that you want to do.
Actually, I have a question on the same line. Basically, ask a question on behalf of the students. And one thing is that really, before graduate, get your resume ready. Make sure a resume is really impressive and very broad and very well prepared. I think another important skill is preparation for an interview. And that's stressful, sometimes can be for some students. I just wonder, can you address that a little bit? How to prepare students for a job interview?
That's a really good point, and it is super intimidating. Talk about feeling like a fish out of water. Your first interview, at least for me, that was definitely the experience. I'll echo all of that. Have your resume and cover letter really professional, and your degree and all of that. Yeah, it might get you the interview, but then it's really time to let yourself shine. And that might mean, and I don't know if there's opportunities on campus to have interview practice, but I would definitely encourage you to, it could be as simple as just Googling like typical interview questions, which hopefully that you won't get typical interview questions, but even like today, Denise sent us the questions last week. We could kind of look over them. and just have some time to prep and practice. I think actually pretending like you're in a situation will help you when you're there. And so if that opportunity, I don't know if it exists on campus, but even doing it with your friends via Zoom. And that's the other thing is now you're in a position most likely where you're going to do all this communication and selling of yourself on this digital interface, sitting in your apartment or your bedroom or something. So practice with all of that, I think, really matters.
And I think going into the interview, confidence goes a long way. I know everyone's nervous during interview, but it's if you practice enough, you won't actually show it. And also, you can practice with friends or family. Another thing I advise is making sure that what the company does, its mission, what projects they have, and also learn your resume. I know that's kind of weird because you wrote it, but some people go into the interview not knowing what they wrote on their resume and cover letter, and it's a bad impression on you. So
I'm going to echo that in terms of, like I said, I've probably sat on 100 interviews at least. And, we kind of poached teachers from Stanford's School of Education and as well as Berkeley because they were kind of equal distance to our school. So the resume and the educational pedigree can be kind of impressive. But if the person had no idea the student population that we served, it just became so obvious. Like, oh, you're on EdJoin and you're looking for jobs. That's cool. I don't want you in my department. Like, you have to want to be here because we're here for a reason, and that builds a sense of community. And I can only imagine that's the case in any professional setting. So really doing your research and maybe even having some, telling your potential employer things that you appreciate about their mission or their company, or questions you might have, curiosities. It just shows that you've done your homework, and it goes a long, long way. And don't worry, it gets easier the more interviews you have. It becomes kind of fun. So just get out there.
Great responses. Thank you all. I appreciate that. I did put up above here, we have an excellent interview tool that allows you to practice called Big Interview. So the link is right here. And it's also on the main homepage of the Career Center's website. So that allows you to select from thousands of interview questions that are pre-recorded from this company called Big Interview, and video yourself answering those questions. An excellent way to do what T and Mitch were both saying to do. So, and then we can guide you if you have questions and need to kind of debrief on what you're struggling with and what you might need to do differently. So thank you all for touching on that interview piece as well. We do have a question in the chat regarding transcripts. So when you're asked to submit a transcript, and this, Mitch, does happen some in education, when you're asked to submit a transcript for a job opportunity, and there's all your history of your classes, how do you explain kind of the ups and downs of that? How do you leverage that? If you weren't a super strong student the whole journey.
I'd love to answer that. There's always a story, and your resume needs to tell a story. The story is about you, but people gravitate towards and resonate with story. So if you look at your transcripts, and that's going to be at times, not always, need to be submitted. There's a story there, and the more you tell that story, I think the better. Now there's going to be people that are like, oh, didn't have a 4.0 or above, just that's some crazy filter, and okay, maybe you didn't want to work there anyway. That's the other thing, is an interview, it goes both ways. You're not just being questioned, you're questioning them too. And you may not have the opportunity to ask a bunch, but you're feeling that out both ways. I can just tell you one of the jobs I interviewed for when I had moved to San Francisco, I just asked one simple question to the department. I was a newer teacher. I've been 2 or 3 years in the classroom, but it's a hard job, especially the first 1 to 5 years in teaching. It's just getting up and going. And there's the attrition rate in education is pretty high those first few years. And so I just asked the team that was interviewing me, what are you doing as a community, as a science department? And there was a new hire, she'd been there 1 year, to make sure she's here in 20 years like you all are. And they didn't have any response. There was no response. And they obviously didn't call me back because I think I heard, I offended them or something. So that was my first experience of like, oh, I need to find a team that resonates, that's good with me too. But I would just be comfortable with it and be proud of yourself. If your grades suffered at times, there's a reason for that. And just be honest about it, sell it. I can tell you right now, I'm a really good high school teacher. And I'm not trying to be arrogant, but the reason I'm really good is I was not a great student, and I know what it's like to feel that way. And so when I approach teaching and I enter the classroom, I get that experience of like, my education's going on all around me. I'm not a subject in my education. I feel like I'm kind of this object. And so I can connect with those disenfranchised students. So when I tell my story, and my transcript looks very much that way, like, why did it take you 7 years to get through your undergrad? Well, there's a story there, and I'll tell you that story. So that's that human part. That's what does your resume and cover letter and transcript say? And if they don't give you the time of day, then move on. Somebody will listen, and you'll have a fun interview and conversation.
That's a great point, Mitch. Thank you. T, did you want to add to that?
If I want to just add to that, I mean, your transcript is one component in the interview, but there's a lot of things that's not on transcript. You like your extracurricular activities, your volunteer work. So make sure you mention those. And not everyone get great grades in school, and that's okay, because if you have those soft skills, that definitely speaks volume. It's you. So soft skills you can teach, hard skills you can. So just keep that in mind.
That's right. I appreciate you saying that. And I think Mitch brings up another kind of angle on this, is that you are interviewing for the right place for you as well. It's not just who wants me, where can I find the first place that'll say yes to me? It's where do you feel like you will fit, and that fits you as, and like in Mitch's example, that wasn't going to be a fit for him. If they didn't care about how to retain him, then it wasn't going to fit for him in the long run, because he needed a place that was going to support him in his first 5 years as a teacher. And so the same as you're interviewing as well, and as you will get the opportunity to ask questions. And so prepare questions that will help you to get answers to make your decision. What is the culture like? Like Mitch it was more around support and retention, what he was asking. What the people really enjoy about working there. There's a number of questions that we can help guide you and counsel you on that you could ask, but that can really help you to get more insight as to if it's a fit for you. And you'll feel it too. You'll feel it as you're, even if it's on Zoom, you'll get a sense from the folks that you're interviewing with, even virtually, if there's a connection there with you and them. And then that is an opportunity as well to seek out some folks that you might know that work there, to ask what their thoughts are about culture and fit, because that is such an important piece as you navigate this next step.
And I'll just add one bit, Denise. I'd be remiss if I don't want it to sound like this euphoric, like, oh, I have like 10 opportunities and I'm just picking. This is awesome. It might be that you have the one. The first job I took, first teaching job here in Sacramento, was horrible. I learned a ton, and I got it because my network, and I knew somebody. And by the end of my first year of teaching, the principal still didn't know my name. So in terms of support, you can see where I was going with that. So at the same time, you might be feeling, if you have one interview, and it's like maybe it's not the perfect fit, but it might also offer some experience. So I just wanted to add that it's a balance. When I walked away from that, well, they didn't offer me a job because I think I offended them, but I also had like 4 other interviews, and I had some experience. So I was like, well, let's talk. And I found the greatest school. I mean, I spent 16 years at a school. So it's a balance. It's definitely a balance.
I just want to add something really quick. So when you're in the interviewing process, don't be afraid to not accept your first job. Just because they're the first to offer, there's other opportunities. If you have other interviews line up, why not take those before you decide? Because like Denise and Mish says, um, it's also your choice who you work for. So you want an employer who cares about, you know, you're not being overloaded. You're seeing that there's opportunities for advancement in your job position. They pay you according to how much you work. You don't want to be overloaded and underpaid. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. What other questions are out there? Don't be shy. This is your opportunity to ask, or you can put it in the chat. I do have a question while others are bringing some questions up. For either of you, did you have any influence from your family as to what you aspired to originally, maybe what you thought you wanted in high school, as we talked about earlier, as you navigated what it was you wanted to do? What influence, if any, came from your family?
I think I probably have a story that a lot of Asians can relate to. All Asian parents want you to go into medical school and become a doctor. If you can't become a doctor, be a nurse. I didn't go and become either doctor or nurse. But you know what? That didn't stop me from changing major into something I'm more passionate about. Um, so I have a very competitive family, by the way. We all compete against each other, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. But definitely, I didn't look at. I didn't ask my brother and sister for their career advice just because they have a different journey than I have it. So it wasn't very helpful. So I definitely say find your career sometime. You just have to do it on your own and figure it out.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up and then we'll go to you, Mitch. T, when your family realized you weren't going to be pre-med anymore, what was the response?
I think their automatic response is, so what do you decide you want to be? It's like, are you sure? Like they really wanted to push that nurse onto me. If you can't be a doctor, be a nurse, like, or a radiologist, so somewhere in the medical field.
Okay.
But once eventually your parents will they'll be happy for whatever choice you make. At least my parents were. So
Thank you for sharing.
In terms of selecting my major, not so much, other than I fell in love with the Sierra Nevada mountains and granite, and a lot of that pushed me towards geology and studying rocks. That was a big part of my childhood. So I guess there's that influence, but my mom taught for 25 or 30 years. And that tends to be, oftentimes that'll lead kids into teaching as well. So I just kind of grew up around it. I never thought I would, I thought I wanted that degree because I wanted to teach. If I was to teach, I wanted to teach earth science. But I really thought I would stay in that nonprofit vein. And then I switched, as I explained. So yeah, not any direct guidance or expectation there.
Thank you. Yes, sometimes, and for those of us that don't come from a college-going family, where you might be the first to earn your degree, the experience can be a little different. So, like I didn't know geology was a major, so sometimes that experience can be a little bit different. So it makes sense that you were had a a parent, a mom that was a teacher and that influenced you. So yes, thank you all.
That's something, that brings up a point my
Mhm.
cousins always said, that, oftentimes, especially if you are the first to graduate from college in your family, or you just maybe have less exposure, like you're saying, Denise, you didn't know like geology's and like you can study rocks as a major, like what? That we often tend to think, kind of like you, like there's a doctor, you can be a nurse, you can be a teacher, these kind of like one word careers, like, and there's just a few of them, but there's not. And that's kind of come up a few times in this conversation, that there's all kinds of varied experience, even just within the realm of geology, but certainly beyond. So.
Thank you.
One of the things that I hear a lot in my previous position is that you wear a lot of hats in your job. You could be a trainer, you could be uh, a leader for one day, or you could be something else the next. Some jobs does require you a diverse skill set. So don't think that just because you want to go into one direction, you're not able to do other work that you're more interested in. It's a give and take.
Thank you. Yes. And there's another question here for Crystal, or from Crystal. Were there any professors that impacted or influenced your career choices and decisions?
I would say the most impactful teacher is Tim Horter, our previous geology dean. He's just a really nice guy, and I loved his hydrogeology class, and he actually got me my first job in the Department of Bioscience. And yeah, I think definitely if you're trying to find a job, reach out to your professors and advisors. They might be able to help because they all have connections. So.
He was trying to get tenure when I was in the program, and I loved his classes. He wrote, does he still write with chalk, or has he moved over to the whiteboard tee? Does he use a chalkboard still?
Oh, I don't. I remember
old.
he used a lot of chalk, but he went into like PowerPoint. He had everything kind of
digital.
already pre-made on his website. Yeah.
So for me, it definitely a different. I went through the geology program again with this lens of being a teacher, and so kind of all of them, because they were all teaching, and yet they were really passionate about the field and helping us find our way and graduate and get jobs. So kind of all of them. I had a great experience with every professor. I know some of them are retired now, so you wouldn't know them, but yeah, so for me, those conversations were very different, because I was thinking about teaching this to young people. So the influence was there as I sat in the room. I loved it, and the student. But at the time, I don't know how big the major is now, but it was pretty intimate. We just had a great experience.
Great, thank you. Any other questions out there? This is your opportunity.
Well, I'll ask a question for students. That happen very often, actually. When students graduate, and especially for a strong student, very often the student will have several interviews lined up. However, after first interview, say the employer said, I'll give you 2 weeks to make decision. If you decide not coming, we'll, offer, if we do not hear from you, for example, and we'll offer to a different person. However, you have really several interviews lined up. You want to compare which one give you a better opportunity. But if you wait 2 weeks later, you don't know whether you're going to get that job offer or not. So how do you resolve this kind of issue during the interview process? But you don't want lose this opportunity. But at the same time, you're worried about, what if I don't get the other offers? This is the only offer I got. Based on your experience, how do you handle this kind of situation? if that happens?
So I actually was in that position where while I was being interviewed by Wood Rogers and they offered a job, I had another interview with DWR already, and they were, once I accepted the job, they were, asking for my recommendations, and I was a top candidate. There was two other people and me, so it's hard. I mean, I think there's ways you can talk to employer or HR and get more an extension on like when you can accept, because maybe you have 2 or 3 other offers that you want to consider, so you tell them you need more time, and that's always understandable. um, just if you're under a tight deadline, you just got to choose. I mean, if it's not the right fit, decline it and wait for the other jobs to go on other interviews. But if you think it is the right job, then accept it. That's my advice.
Thank you.
I only have advice from the other side, because I was the person that would say that to people. And now I feel bad, but it's a compliment. So if you find yourself in that situation, it's a compliment. Like, we want to hire you, and we would sometimes, like, you have 24 hours. This is the place you want to be. We want you, decide. And some people just wouldn't. That's not realistic. But if they're that excited about you, first of all, just sit in that compliment. But I would echo exactly what T said. Going into an interview and divulging that just right up front, right out of the gate. Like, I'm really excited to be here. Or maybe when they give you the 2 weeks, like just letting them know the reality. And I don't know if it's possible, but to reach out to, adjust an interview date might also be possible to fit within that window. Maybe not, but one, it's a compliment, being honest about it. It's a reality, but I just can speak to it from the other side. There'd just be people that I wanted on my team badly. And, in education, there's no like, we'll give you a bonus or we'll do, like, it's just, please come and work here with us. You'll love it. But yeah, you do. And then you just got to choose.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think it's important going in, I'm just going to add, to know where your values stand. And so as you go through this process, to take some notes of what is most important to you in this next step. And is that to find, an environment that you really love, the people that you connect to? Is it the salary? Which piece is it, the commute? So as you're comparing job offers, you can go through a decision-making process where you can say, okay, where does this job hit on the scale of salary for me? I'm going to have to commute, an hour a day to get to this job, but this other one is right around the corner from my house. So maybe that moves it up a little bit higher. So it's a good time to start practicing those decision-making strategies, and you enlist that as you are embarking on this job search as well, but really prioritizing where your values are. Because for some of us, the salary may not be as high on the scale, or for a job where you really just love the people you'd be working with and you just really feel super passionate about the work you'd be doing, the commute won't matter. So it just depends on how you value those different components. So I would advise that you all, as you take this next step, to make a list of some of those things and rank what is most important to you. And that may change and it will change as time goes on, but you need a starting place, and that will help you. Just my added 2 cents there. Okay, so one last call here for any final questions for Mitch and T. Well, I appreciate all of the insightful information that you all have given, and for sharing your stories with us. I think there has been a lot here to really take in, and I hope that it really helped the participants, in particular the students that are here listening today, and some of those that ask questions. So we really appreciate both of you coming back and giving your time virtually, and someday we'll be able to welcome you back to campus and do this in person again. And but for now, this will suffice, and we will have the recording, as I mentioned, and that we can share with everyone. So unless there is anything final, we will go ahead and wrap up and let everyone go about their days. But thank you again so very much.
Thank you. This is fun.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's great being on here. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.